So we record all of our guests that allow us to record them and put it on our YouTube page and on our Connect page. So if y'all want to reference it later on, or you want a friend to watch it, whatever, it's available to you. Are we good, Thomas? Okay. So Dr. Ed Rodgers is a staff psychologist at the Baylor Counseling Center. He received his doctorate in clinical psychology from Baylor University, his master's in clinical psychology from Loyola, I think I said that right, University of Maryland, and has a bachelor's degree in computer engineering. Dr. Rodgers works in youth ministry before entering graduate school in psychology. He is interested in the ways that people handle suffering and how we create beauty and meaning out of our pain. Dr. Rodgers left fishing and his family, which includes 2 daughters and 2 sons, and his youngest child is just 3 weeks old. I'm so glad that Dr. Rodgers could be with us tonight, and I think we're all going to learn something, so please give a warm welcome to Dr. Rodgers.
Thanks. I'm going to need to advance those by hand, right?
Yes.
The screen's still off. I'm going to move things around a little bit up here. Sweet. So, you've got somebody here from the Baylor University Counseling Center, and I was told that I can talk about anything having to do with mental health. So that's a huge field. That's a huge, broad depth of topics. So I thought I would start off one way and then abruptly switch courses and go in a different direction with you all. So if you were listening to my bio, you would have heard a few things that might have piqued your interest. So I'm currently at the Counseling Center, and I'm a psychologist, but I've also been a youth minister and a computer engineer at various points in my profession. So I feel like I've been a few different places. I'm glad I've ended up where I am. This is clearly where I was meant to be, but I didn't start off in that direction. If we had more time, I would love to get to know something a little bit about each of you before I start talking to you, but I'm going to try and do that in a slightly different way with you all today. So first I'm going to give you a couple statistics about mental illness in the United States, and specifically in college students, but I want to do it in a little bit different way. So if I point to you, I want you to tell me your name and then stand up. Think you can handle that? Is this too advanced of a level here? Okay. So we're going to start right here.
My name's Roy.
Okay. Roy.
Luke.
Luke.
Jared.
Jared.
Caleb.
Caleb.
Chicago.
Okay, now I've stood up the row of guys. All right. So your name?
Alexis.
Alexis?
Valerie.
Valerie. Okay. So if this group of youth students represented college students in the United States, at least this many of you would have a diagnosed mental illness. Okay? So just to kind of try that on for size, if this was the whole population of college students, at least this many people would have a diagnosable mental illness. So thanks. You guys can all have a seat for me. I'm going to pick on you guys over here so I can hear your names too now. Rita?
Misael.
Misael? Okay. Your name?
Melissa.
Melissa? Yeah.
Haley.
Haley?
Maria.
Maria?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth?
Shelby.
Shelby?
Shannon.
Shannon?
Brittany.
Brittany?
Lindsay.
And Lindsay. Okay, so similar thing. If this was the population of college students in the U.S., at least this many of you would have felt so depressed at some point that they could not function. So again, if you look around the room, that's a sizable chunk of you all. So thanks. You all can have a seat. I'm going to get all the rest of you on this one.
Brittany.
Brittany.
Tori.
Tori.
Megan.
Megan.
Brandy.
Brandy.
Anthony.
Anthony.
Rachel.
Sierra.
Sierra,
Rachel.
Rachel,
Brittany.
Brittany,
Reed.
Reed, Ruru. All right. Coming back to you.
Roy.
Roy,
Luke.
Luke,
Jared.
Jared. All right. So again, same thing. If this is all the college students in the United States, this many of you would have had thoughts about ending your own life. So think about the people that you know in college. Think about the percentage of people who are standing up right now. That's how many people have actually been at a point where they thought about ending their own life. Thanks for standing up for me, y'all. Have a seat now. So you've seen some of these statistics here, right? Given that 1 in 4 adults and an even higher number of college students live with a diagnosable mental illness, given that more than a third of college students report feeling that they're depressed at some point to the level that they feel like they just can't cope with life, even given that, people in the 18 to 24-year-old age range are the least likely of any adult age group to actually seek help for anything that's going on with them. And 85% of college students report that they felt overwhelmed by everything that they had to do at some point in the last couple months. Now, what I want to know is where'd they find the other 15%? Because I feel like everybody almost hits that point, especially with all the stresses that you have going into college and just adjusting to everything. Workloads, classes, expectations, groups, organizations like this one. So another thing I wanted to just touch on, I gave you basically like 50% of college students have had a thought about ending their own life at some point during college. Half of those people have never talked to anyone or gotten any sort of help about it. So that means that there's fully a quarter of all college students who've been at that place and never gotten any sort of help for it. So I put together a few other slides for this. So this is some of the things I just mentioned. This is just a list of numbers. This is a survey of several thousand college students across the U.S. and they report these kinds of numbers as far as mental illness issues go. So my question for you is, hearing that, seeing these numbers, their statistics, but what does that make you think of when seeing these kinds of numbers? What's crossing your mind as we go over this right now? Feel free to speak up. You don't even have to raise your hand.
I literally felt overwhelmed right before I walked into the store.
Right before you walked in, right? You're leading the meeting, yeah. So,
Unrelated to the club stuff.
all right. What else? What's crossing your mind?
I think the system might be letting us as a population down if this is the case.
A lot of people that need help. A lot of people that need help that don't get help. What else?
How many of these people are people that we know?
Yeah. Those are huge numbers, right? I mean, I took this room, and like how many of the people just in this room are standing up, right? So how many of these people are people you know? It's worth thinking about. So along those lines, I wanted to come out and say that at the beginning, just to acknowledge that, one, this is a very important issue. Two, it's something that matters for you. This isn't like something that like adults out in the real world only struggle with. Like, this is everybody. This is people in this room. This is the friends. This is the other people that you know, too. They're in these categories. They have these experiences. You know people who are struggling with these kinds of things. But then also, being from the Counseling Center, I wanted to let you know that there are resources, even here on campus, for this. The Counseling Center is up on the second floor of the Slick. If you know where the health center is, it's right next to it. And the counseling center has also expanded in a huge way in the last 3 months. So we have about twice as many psychologists there as we did before. They're renovating another space for us on campus in order to make resources for those people who need it. Kind of like you were saying, maybe if the system is kind of letting us down, well, Baylor's trying to do a good job of providing as many resources as they can. So the Baylor Counseling Center is free. There's no charge. It's confidential. We're not going to share your information anywhere else. And you can just walk in. Anytime between 9 and 4, show up. You'll sit down and meet with a counselor, and you can talk with them about whatever it is that's bringing you in, and they'll find whatever way that the counseling center can assist you, whether it's meeting with a therapist, whether it's getting you connected to another resource, whether it's being part of a group, seeing the dietitian that we have on staff. I mean, we've got a lot of different things, but you can literally just walk in, sit down, talk with somebody. They'll point you in the right direction, kind of get you set up with that. And even if you're sitting there going like, okay, but yeah, what are the odds I need to go to the counseling center at some point? You probably know somebody that could use it. So knowing where it is and knowing that it's there, maybe that night when you're talking to them, you're like, oh yeah, you could probably use talking with somebody. You can bring it up, and the next day you can just walk them over. Just walk over with them and say, hey, look, it's not that big of a deal. There's a large percentage of our college population, over 1 in 10 students at Baylor utilizes the counseling center during the course of their time here. And that's, that number probably is going to go up from here. So it's not an uncommon thing, and many people make use of it. And I want to let you know it's there. But I don't want to spend the whole night going, oh my gosh, look how many difficulties and problems we have. So I'm going to spend the rest of our time talking about mental health. Right? So the statistics I showed you about mental illness or mental disorder, mental difficulties, right? Being overwhelmed, being depressed, not being able to quite deal with stress, those kinds of things. But I figure you're probably more interested in, well, how can I live in a healthy way? Like, how can I live in a way that I don't end up in one of those categories? How can I live in a way that I am able to do the things that I want in life and not have overwhelming stress get in my way? So that's what I want to talk with you a little bit about today, and I'm going to talk to you about it in kind of 4 main points, if you will. So the first one is, how do you build resilience to stress? If 85% of college students are experiencing overwhelming stress, then you probably need some sort of way to get ready for it, because it's coming for you, right? The next one, kind of get some distance from our thoughts. A lot of times we get way too fused, maybe we'll call it, with the thoughts that we have, and they start to just run our lives as opposed to us choosing what we really want to do. And then make some space for what we're feeling so that we can have a full, healthy range of emotional experience. And then figure out how are we going to commit to acting in accordance with our values. So I think people who manage to do these 4 things on an ongoing basis, this is what I would say looks like healthy, a full life, a way of dealing with difficult situations in which you can continue to do what you want, move forward, and be psychologically healthy. So the first thing I would say, building resilience to stress, right? So I pulled these things out of just one, they all fit with my clinical experience and my training. But I also pulled some of them out of the American Psychological Association's recommendations on their website. So the number 1 thing on every list of dealing with stress is exercise. Every single one of them. And the reason is that our mind and our body are incredibly tied together. You don't do something to your body that doesn't affect your mind. You don't do something to your mind that doesn't also affect your body. So when you're exercising, 1, you're healthier physically. It's easier to be mentally healthy. But 2, because your mind and your body are tied together, when you exercise, you actually change your brain. When you're exercising, the neurotransmitters that cause your brain to function in a positive way are more active, and you actually have things in your brain called endogenous opioids. That basically means naturally made narcotics. And when you exercise, you release lots of them in your brain. So it literally causes a physical reaction that makes you feel better and improves your mood. But not only that, it helps to deal with pain. And stress is one way that we mentally experience pain. So when you exercise, you're creating physical reactions in your brain that are helping you tolerate stress better. It's a little piece of why exercise is so important, why people talk about it all the time. So another piece is sleeping enough. Particularly in college, that's not always easy, right? There's lots of things going on. There's often lots of things going on late at night. So sleeping enough is one of the things that drops out first. But again, sleep is the time when your brain heals itself from all the exertion of the day. If you think about physical exercise, you're kind of straining your muscles, and then you have to stretch and relax so those muscles can kind of heal and strengthen before you can do another round another day, right? Sleep is the way that your brain does that. It's literally healing and recovering from a day. And when you don't get enough sleep, your brain doesn't do that well enough, and you start to kind of accumulate a backlog, and you become much more vulnerable to stress. One of the things that I'll say to people who are talking about trying to figure out stress is take a break. And most of the time, the first response is like, I don't have enough time to even do the things I'm already supposed to do. You're telling me to take more time out of my schedule? Yes. I mean, you can either take that time up front as a break to stay healthy, or you're going to pay that time out later when you're inefficient because you're overly tired or you're too stressed and you're not functioning at your optimum efficiency. If you take it earlier, you'll be more efficient all the way through and you'll enjoy it more. So take a break. There's a lot of studies that show that even at work, if you're working on a project for 4 hours, if you take a few 15-minute breaks in the middle, you're more productive through the whole time than if you work for 4 hours. There's another couple of studies that I read recently that said they trained people for a new job at work. And they had 3 groups of people. And the first group, they just trained them and had them go do their job. The second group, they trained them, they're doing their job, but for 15 minutes at the end of each day, they had to reflect on what they did that day and tell someone else about it. Like reflect on how they were matching up to what they wanted to do, and then let somebody else know how they did. And then the third group, they just had to reflect for 15 minutes at the end of the day. How did I do today? Did I do what I wanted to do today? Just thinking about what they did at work. The 2 groups who had to reflect at the end of the day, on average, were 25% more productive than the group that just got trained and went into work. So in your 8-hour day, they got 2 hours back in productivity by reflecting for 15 minutes at the end of their day. I mean, imagine if I told you, you can create 2 hours for yourself every day just by making 15 minutes to be quiet and reflect on how you did in a given day. I mean, would you take that bargain? Because you get the opportunity to. Take a break, relax, even in the middle of a busy schedule, it'll help you. So the other things on here sound fairly pleasant, right? Make time for the things that you care about. Get together with people. Spend some time smiling and laughing, right? Spend time attending to your spirituality. Pray or meditate. Connect with whatever those deeper sources of meaning are for you. To the extent that you're doing those things, you're healthier, and then when stressors happen, you're better able to deal with them because you're connected to the stuff that matters to you. So hopefully that's fairly straightforward. Questions about any of those things? Or how you can do them as a college student? All right. Y'all can ask questions at any point. You don't have to wait for me to tell you that you can. So just letting you know that right off the bat. So point number 2, your mind is not your friend. There's a lot of stress in our lives, but we also contribute a lot of stress by the way that we treat ourselves and the way that we think. And I think a lot of times this happens with these kinds of statements that we make to ourselves. So things like, I have to do something. There's no option. Or thinking about other people and wondering about how they're judging us. Kind of remembering all the bad things that have happened to us. Beliefs that we have about how we should act or shouldn't act. Or just saying, I don't want to feel this way. Or even something as simple as, I just want to be happy. Like these things can get in our way. Now, if you're paying attention for some of these, you might be like, well, what's wrong with that one? And here's what I would say. What do you see? Raise your hand if you see a woman. Okay, keep your hand raised if the woman is an old woman. Okay, now put your hands down. Raise your hand if you see a young woman. Okay. Do you see both of them? Okay, good. So everybody in here saw one of them first, right? Like you didn't see both of them at the exact same time. You saw one, and then when you started looking more, or when I asked for a different one, you were able to see something different, right? Anybody still need help seeing one or the other of them? Okay, so if you're seeing an old woman, this is her nose and her nostril and her mouth. And if you're seeing a young woman, this is her chin, this is her nose, this is her eyelash looking away from you, and this is her ear. This is kind of the outline of the bottom of her face. Everyone see both of them now? Yes? Anyone not? Okay, so this is an ambiguous picture, right? There are two things that are equally valid to see in this picture. But your mind took an ambiguous thing and it made sense out of it immediately, instantly, just like that. But it just picked one. And you saw that one. And then maybe you were able to see the other one, or maybe you needed a prompt to see that the other one was there. But now you can kind of see both, but your mind just gave you an answer for a situation that could be either way. Just gave you one and kept on going. So what about this? Take a moment, look at the center of that picture. In between the black rectangles, do you see anything? Okay, some of you are nodding. So, do you see dim gray circles in between the squares? You guys all see that? Okay. I didn't put them there. All I put up is a white background and black rectangles, right? But you can see the circles, correct? Okay, so you're seeing things that aren't there. Should we check you into the counseling center? No, your mind does this all the time. It comes up with ways of filling in the gaps of things that you see. So when I say your mind is not your friend, your mind arbitrarily makes meaning of things that have ambiguous meanings. Your mind shows you things that are not there, right? Now there's good reasons for this. It helps you in many ways, but it also can get in your way in some other ways, right? So where would you be right now if you had done everything that ever crossed your mind? Somebody give me an answer. Where would you be right now if you'd done everything that ever crossed your mind?
Jail.
Jail. All right.
Dead.
Dead. Where else?
Cooking school in France.
Cooking school in France. Okay. And soon afterwards, maybe in jail or dead. So I'd have to say that probably 90% of the time when I ask this question, I get either in jail or dead, because everyone's had some sort of thought that would have either injured them if they followed it, or probably gotten them in trouble with the law. We've had millions and millions of thoughts over time, right? But just all these thoughts.